What I want to talk about is a news story from Sweden, particularly as it relates to paid remigration, which I think isn't going to work. I think there's quite a bit of evidence to show that it's very unlikely to work. And what I'm saying here is aimed particularly at people who favour remigration and who think in the back of their minds it's going to be easy, it'll be simple, we'll just be able to pay them a little bit of money to go, because that money we pay them will be a fortune in the countries that they're going back to. This isn't an attack on good people on our side. I don't want to destroy their motivation. This is a warning or a plea. I'm trying to suggest that what people who are formulating policy for remigration should think it through coldly, calculatedly and realistically. Think through the ugly realities. Now I understand a lot of good people on our side, they say, well, I don't want violence. I recognise other people don't want violence. We don't want blood on our hands. We don't want it on our consciences. We don't want to dirty our hands. We want to attract people into the cause, into the nationalist cause, by telling them it's okay. You can do it and remain moral, because we recognise that people have some kind of ethical qualms or disquiet about what remigration will mean, what they'll have to do. And I think it's not hard to recognise that a lot of just ordinary members of the public, us in general, have a tendency to reverse engineer a lot of our opinions by saying, I'd like to get rid of them all. If we do that, we're going to have to use an awful lot of violence. I can't see how it can be done without a lot of violence. Therefore, I won't favour remigration. I think Nigel Farage comes to that point of view. I think particularly with Muslim people, but I think his view is, I can't see a way to do it without a lot of violence. We'll have to kill everyone. I don't want to do that. Therefore, I'll say we're going to be nice to Muslims, let them stay here, become a majority, and just be nice to them in the meantime. That appears to be what his statements amount to. And so I think a lot of people think that way, and I understand why nationalist groups that are trying to attract more followers will try to soft pedal the reality of remigration. I'm not aware of paid remigration ever having worked. I can think of negative, forced, Mr. Nasty remigration. That's worked a lot throughout history. Ethnic cleansing, awful genocides, terrible things. But I can't think of any example of people agreeing to be paid to leave. Okay, what I want to do now, I'd like to refer to this story. If you give me a second, here it is. That's in a paper called Remix. That's backed by the Hungarian government. Hungary seems to have picked up on this story for some reason. There's a shorter version of it there on what's called Magyar Nemzet. I think that means Magyar Hungarian News. That's a Hungarian. I think they call it the Hungarian Nation, or the Voice of the Hungarian Nation, something like that. But the main one is this one, which is in Remix. My main point is that's not a left-wing. It's not a left-wing outlet. And what they're saying is, I want to go through the whole. Unusually, I normally try and pick out the bones of a story because it's too tedious to go through the whole thing. But this is a short article. I think the whole thing's worth going through. And the headline there says it: very few migrants interested in Sweden's remigration offer worth €31,000. Now, while many migrants may not like Swedes, most have no interest in ever leaving Sweden. So this doesn't mince its words. It doesn't try to say that diversity is our strength and that all immigrants are falling over themselves with gratitude towards us. That they recognise it's not the case. So, despite being offered £31,000 to remigrate by the Swedish government, polling shows that very few migrants would accept the offer. As Remix News previously reported, the Swedish government is making a significant monetary offer of 350,000 Swedish krona. I think that's an increase from previously it was, I think, it was 10,000 krona for an adult and 5,000 for a child. They've now made a whacking great increase there to 350,000 Swedish krona to foreigners living in Sweden to voluntarily return home. It is also important to note that this amount will be paid out per person. So that's not per household, not per family, not per adult, per person, which means a family of 4 could receive 124,000 euros. Still, these foreigners are so desperate to live in Sweden, a majority white country, that the vast majority of them said they would reject the offer, according to a poll conducted by the website Al Compass. Now, I looked up Al Compass. This is the only weakness of the story. Al Compass is a Swedish independent newspaper that writes news from Sweden in Arabic. And it was founded in 2012 by journalist Mahmoud Aga, foreign name, in Stockholm. So that seems to me to be foreigners in Sweden reporting news in Arabic for other foreigners. So it's possible it's all a pack of lies. I see no evidence that it's a pack of lies. This research was based on a sample size of 2,700 people, which I think that's a pretty good sample. That's more than just an indication. Okay, so the poll showed that 77% of those questioned in the survey said that they were not even interested in the increased amount, and only 15% said they would be interested in the offer. The others are uncertain. However, of those 15%, this is the point here, being interested in it doesn't mean you'll snatch their hands off. So of those 15% who said they were interested in the offer, it is possible that very few of them would actually go ahead and accept the offer. Despite these low numbers, even a small percentage of foreigners accepting the offer could result in tens of thousands of people remigrating. So it might be worth doing. If you can get a foreigner to go for 31,000 euros, that saves you a lot of money given how parasitic they are. So that's, but I'm not saying don't do it. Well, it's possible. There are good reasons. There are good reasons not to do it, but you can't rely on that as the main plank in your remigration platform. I think that's the main point I'm making. So simply because you're offered the money, that doesn't mean you're going to go. The poll also revealed that 90% of the more than 2,700 respondents had already heard about the increased repatriation subsidy. So if 90% of them have heard about it, then all of them must have been in Sweden because they were the ones who were asked. That suggests that they're not leaving. Very few of them actually are leaving. I'm not aware of any figures being published about how many people have taken up this offer. I think those figures probably will get published, and I think they could be punished as well, actually. They're punishingly small. I think those numbers will be low. Okay. Now, the poll also asked the respondents if they'd be open to accepting an even higher amount, and it is important to note that a strong majority said that they would never accept any offer. I think that is foreigners waving their hands about, exaggerating. I think if you offer them £1 million, I think a lot of them would go. But, well, let's see. Theoretically, even if they were offered millions of euros to return to their homelands, they would still not take the offer. That might be over-egging it a bit, but you get the point. The poll showed that among the 77% who said no to the 31,000, they were also asked whether they would accept a higher amount. 66% of them, I don't know if that means 66% of the total or 66% of the 77% who said no. So 66% of them answered that they would never return to their country, while 25% would consider going home for more money. So that seems strange. Those numbers do add up. So, and that suggests you're going to have to make it a big offer. I'll come to that in a minute. 23% of the respondents would consider returning for an amount of 1 million Swedish krona. So if the current offer was trebled, then they would go, and trebling that would amount to 88,000 euro. That's about 74,000 pounds. So 23% of the total said they would leave for 74,000 pounds each. So How are we ever going to afford that? And should we have to pay them to do that? I don't think so. In many of the countries these immigrants are from, such a sum is an incredible fortune. For instance, in Afghanistan, the average annual salary is €1,000. I think it's less than €1,000 in Afghanistan. However, Swedish benefits for migrants and illegal migrants are also extremely generous, and unlike Middle Eastern and African countries, Sweden features efficient and highly organised hospitals, sanitation systems, schools and universities, and modern infrastructure. There are also a lot of other things, nice things, like you're living amongst nice people who are nicer than you, and also you're able to wander down the street and not get molested. Women won't get molested and beaten in the street for showing an ankle. You're likely to you're not going to have a soldier come up to you with a gun and demand money just because everyone's bent there, and so it's a lot nicer life. That is worth a lot of money. The ability just to walk down the street unmolested, and so to continue, to get something done or even move freely, nobody needs to bribe officials or police officers. In some of the countries these migrants are from, there is no guarantee that the money they receive from the Swedish government would even be secure. So, under the current plan, the offer will go into effect on the 1st of January. That's why there are no figures today. It will go into effect on the 1st of January 2026. I don't know why they're taking so long about it, with tens of millions of euros already slated in the budget for the remigration effort. That won't be enough. Okay, in order to ensure that the recipients of repatriation support do not travel to Sweden again with a different identity, which has happened with many who have been deported, immigrants will have to record biometric data. Okay, so you get the gist of it. 90% of them know about it already. Only 77% said they would be interested. Don't really know what that means. And 67% or either of the 77% or of the whole number said you couldn't pay them any amount to leave, and only 23% said they leave for a million krona, or €88,000, 74,000 quid. Okay. What I would add to that is that when you're paying people to go, then you create an incentive at the other side amongst us to actually decide that diversity is our strength. These people are worth having. They do contribute. In fact, they do like us after all, because you are punishing you're punishing us for putting remigration into effect. You create an incentive for us not to do it. And the more you pay people, the more you increase that sum, you push that sum up and up and up, the more you increase the incentive for us, particularly poor people amongst us, to say, actually, let's just keep the money and let them stay and let them just live in their areas. And I think that means that what this means is that positive remigration in general is not going to work. Positive remigration means Mr. Nice Guy remigration, saying, please leave, we'll do something nice for you. We want you to want to go. We want to persuade you to want to go. That's not going to work. I think that is fantasy, or all the evidence shows that is fantasy. And I think we need to prepare for openly and calculatedly for negative remigration. That means Mr. Nasty remigration, getting people to go because their conditions here are too bad. And that means really, really bad. You have to make those conditions really bad to make them worse than Afghanistan, Somalia, or Pakistan, which I found a perfectly foul country when I visited many decades ago. So the really horrible, unpleasant, hard work, unrewarding, ugly challenge is to think through how we can accomplish remigration in a reasonably consensual way, in an orderly way, without dirtying our hands and our consciences with bloodshed. And that is the thing. That is the ugly task that people are avoiding, because it is so ugly, because the problem seems so intractable. And this, again, I say again, the purpose of what I'm saying here is to try to tempt, to coax people, to persuade people to think coldly, hard, and in an analytical way, a nerdy way, about how we accomplish negative remigration. And I'm looking at that there are two groups in particular who have called for paid remigration. These are decent people, these are good people. Again, this is not me trying to attack them. I appreciate they'll probably take it as an attack. It is not. It is me trying to get them to think again and to think better. Now, the first one is Patriotic Alternative. They have previously stated that they would offer £15,000 per person to go. That is slightly over half what the Swedish government is now offering and what foreigners don't appear to be interested in taking up. So what the Swedish government are offering is 26 grand. So that's not quite double what Patriotic Alternative was saying that they would offer. Now, to their credit, PA have not talked about it very much for quite a while, and I think they've gone quiet about it, and very wisely, I think very intelligently, they've moved towards community building. I think their line is absolutely right. It's spot on. It is that there's little public appetite for amongst the electorate, or there's little appetite amongst voters for nationalist politics. Whatever there is going to be dominated by Farage. He's not in favour of remigration, and so we're not going to vote our way out of this. I think PA may be quietly coming around to the view that maybe collapse will come before a really landslide policy of remigration. And what they're doing, which I think is the right thing to do, is a really good thing, and that is building community. It is, God knows we need plenty of that. So, but they have mentioned it, and if they're still holding on to that policy, I hope that the experience of Sweden so far will cause them to reconsider it in a hard-headed way. Now, other people, the other group who have this idea about paid repatriation appear to be Homeland. Now they are currently working on their policy. So if I just go here again, now that is So that's Homeland resumed working. This is a tweet from yesterday. Resumed working on Homeland policies this evening. Interesting dynamic working in a policy team. A real contrast to working alone. Every sentence is debated and cross-examined for relevance and accuracy. It's a far slower, more laborious process. At this rate, it will be a year before we have a set of basic policies. It tells me that if reform is leaving the process to the last minute, it will again enter the election with nothing but intellectually threadbare slogans. I agree with that. This work cannot be hurried. You may not agree with all of Homeland's policies, but at least we'll have some. Now, I think that is professionals talking. I think they're right. They're working through it. But what I hope is, in particular, that someone will forward the link to what I'm saying here to those people within Homeland who are trying to work out who are trying to formulate policy. They're right to take time over it, but my suspicion is that they are they're going to rely on paid remigration because it's so easy. It's an easy catch-all. It's a kind of it's a bit of a get-out-of-jail card because you avoid being nasty, but you promise that you really will accomplish wide-scale, pervasive remigration. I don't think it'll work. I don't think it will, and so that's partly why I'm mentioning it now, so that to persuade Homeland not to go down that road of saying you're worried about how we'll accomplish remigration. Don't worry, we've got a nice way of accomplishing it. Now, I don't know what Homeland are going to decide. I'm guessing. I could be wrong, and I hope they'll forgive me if I'm talking out of turn. But what I'm going on is the only indication I have at the moment is what Steve Laws has said and made pretty popular, and he's done a good job here putting forward a plan and getting it well known. His 7-point plan is much better known than any plan that I've put forward, and got on, in fact, having the courage and the typical sort of tenacity and mental aggression to be able to do it. So I'm not picking his 7-point plan apart because I want to demotivate him, I want to undermine him or attack him. It's simply that I think reality and the truth about what's coming, I think that is more important. That's what matters, rather than people's feelings and people's morale. So again, this is Steve Law's 7-point plan. I've been through it a couple of times before. And the 7-point plan, firstly, it's deporting all illegals in the system. Secondly, it's deporting foreign criminals. Third, people who've entered illegally, regardless of when. Fourth, immigrants on benefits and not working. And 5, any foreigner working against our interests. And 6, that is voluntary repatriation with financial incentives. I think that's paid repatriation. Finally, forced repatriation. Now, I think the big numbers out of that, deporting illegals, I think that might be 5%. There might be possibly another people who've entered illegally in the past. I don't know. It's difficult to know, but maybe up to 1 million illegals in the system at the moment. I think that's somewhere between 1 and 1.2 million. I'd say that's roughly about 5% of the numbers that are going to have to be remigrated, maybe not more than 7.5%. Foreign criminals, I think that is the big group, and also paid repatriation and forced repatriation. And it's which category will all the numbers fall in amongst out of the last two, paid or forced repatriation. Now, I think deporting foreign criminals, I think that stage 2 comes under stage 7, forced repatriation, because you're going to have to force them to go. I don't think you'll be able to write to them and say, you've got a criminal conviction, you've got to go, please show up at the remigration office tomorrow. Those are the people who will go out and hide. They'll change their name. They'll say, oh no, you want Mohammed Ahmed. I'm not Mohammed Ahmed. I'm Ahmed Mohammed. Mohammed Ahmed, he's my cousin and he went to Manchester a while ago, don't know where he is. They're the ones who will hide out. They're not going to obey the law. So I think you're really going to have to use the methods of pretty aggressive forced repatriation methods to get them out. And I'll go through why that's a problem. Why forced repatriation that's going to be tougher. I don't think it'll work, but I want to go through that in a minute. My point here is where the bulk of the numbers will fall. I think the idea, I think I've heard Steve saying this, is that forced repatriation will apply to the remnant of holdouts, the hardened warriors who just want to go down fighting, and we can grant them their wish. And I think that, in fact, that forced repatriation is going to be more than 80% of the numbers. I think the hope is that 80% will come within stage 6. So all the others, that could amount to 10 or maybe 20% at most of the numbers, and then the bulk of the rest of them will go because they're paid to go. They'll realise, gosh, we're not very welcome here, it's not very nice, and we're being offered a nice bit of money, let's just go while the going's good. And then the remnant get a tiny minority, stay and fight it out. I think that's the idea. I think that's wrong. The purpose of this Swedish, or the evidence from Sweden, is to say stage 6, paid repatriation, that's not going to be 80% of your remigration effort. I don't think it'll even be, I'd be surprised if it's even 10% of your remigration effort. I think the forced repatriation, where people have to go because of the negative consequences of staying, I think that's really where it's at. Now, this matters for a bunch of reasons. Firstly, because let's suppose the people who are calling for paid remigration, they're saying paid remigration will work. Let's suppose they mean it. They're being sincere. They really do believe that all of these, the 57 varieties, will get up and go when they're offered 20 grand, 30 grand to go. Okay. And query whether we should have to pay them, whether we can afford to, whether we will want to part with that kind of money to get them to go. I agree it would be a bargain. So let's assume people want to. But if you mean it, if you're sincere about it, what happens if, I would say when, it doesn't work? So you've based all your plans on paid remigration working, and the foreigners say, no, we're not going. We don't want. It's not worth it. We're going to stay here. What do you do then? Do you just give up? Do you turn around to all your foreigners and say, well, your followers, the people who voted for you, and say, well, you voted for us to do it, and we can't. It's not working. We thought it would. Sorry, fellas. It's just not going to work. We're going to give up. Probably not. What do? Do you increase the amount? Do you up the incentive? I think you're going to have to increase that incentive, given the wealth disparity between our country and their countries, and the number of years ahead. You're going to have to compensate them for every year's lost income for the rest of their lives, or rest of their working lives. And I think that's going to need to be between 500,000 and 1 million. I would say 500,000 is where it starts to kick in. And we can't afford that. We don't have the money to do that. People won't agree to that because for a lot of us, we'll say, well, actually, if you give me £500,000 and then we abandon the idea of remigration, well, that's £500,000. I think I quite like that. So I don't think you can respond by simply increasing the amount because you can never get to a high enough amount for it to work. And so what do you do then? The only thing you can do is to move on to brute force. Now, and the problem with that is if you've based all your promises on paid repatriation, you won't have prepared coldly and enough detail for you won't have gamed it out. You won't have played chess in your head enough to get up a strategy that will work. I don't think brute force remigration will work. I think there are too many of them. If it's 15, probably nearer 20 million by the time it comes to it. That's too many, and too many of them be children because they tend to be concentrated down the younger end. Women and children too enmeshed in society, and just the numbers are too great, and that reinforces their confidence. It ingrains the sense of defiance because that they can look each other in the eye and motivate each other, and then it becomes one hell of a problem finding. You have to go out and find these people, find out where they are, locate them, then identify them. Are you Mohammed Ahmed or are you Ahmed Mohammed? Tell me, come on, be honest. Show me your passport. Oh, I haven't got it, I lost it. Will you show me your driving license? Haven't got it, I lost it. No, you Mohammed Ahmed, he's my cousin. So, and then you have to sift through these people, and separate them out from the people you don't want to remigrate, some of whom might be traitors as well. Then you have to separate these people out physically and take them to a different area. Then you have to take them to holding camps and then transfer them from those holding camps to the ferry or to the airport. And all of this is before you have considered the really sharp end stuff, which is the delicacy of aeroplanes as a repatriation method. Also, I would say repatriating people by boat in large numbers, that's a very difficult thing to do. I would not like to be a pilot or a ship's captain or a pilot on a plane carrying 300 angry foreigners who are being remigrated against their will. I mean, you're going to have to bind them and strap them to their seats because all they'd have to do is run to the back of the plane to tip it up and pull it out of the sky. It's not going to be that easy. And then what if the receiving country says no? We're not accepting your remigration flights. What do you do then? So if it is to work, you've got to plan it. You've got to prepare for it. And the sort of things you have to plan for is where are these holding camps going to be? Who is going to do the searching and finding these people? Who's going to ferret them out? Who's going to look in the cupboard under the sink, the cupboard under the stairs, or in the loft to try and find them, or in the wardrobe under the bed to try and get the foreigner who's hiding there? Who then guards them when they're in the camps? Who are the guards going to be? Are ordinary soldiers going to want to do that, given that a lot of them will be at the younger end, at the child end of this? And will the pilots fly? Are ordinary civilian pilots going to fly? I don't know. And if you can't work that out in advance and have a strategy, the chances are you'll address it at the time in an ad hoc way by saying, well, let's apply more brute force. And that brute force doesn't work, so we'll apply more brute force. That is a strategy for failure. Because I think a lot of soldiers won't do it because it has too many horrible associations and it's just too unpleasant. A lot of soldiers will say, this isn't what I signed up for. And it's also really dangerous because these people they're not afraid to go down fighting. So I think that's a problem if you actually mean, if you really believe that the policy of paid remigration will work. I appreciate there might also be people who don't believe it will work and are quite realistic about it, but are simply saying, let's put this forward as a nice way to get people on board. I understand this because I can see that some people might say, I like this idea of paid remigration. I can support it in good conscience. I don't have to feel disapproved of by people I like or friends or family, and so I'll come on board. And then once they're on board, then they'll sign up to the real nitty-gritty, the horrible, the ugly program of forced remigration. The problem the problem with that is that people aren't stupid. And hiding the harsh facts of life from people, in general, it undermines trust. People respect honesty about unpalatable reality. And the second thing is that parties, movements tend to believe their own propaganda. So if you're putting forward the Mr. Nice Guy line as a gentle white lie in order to get more followers, the people within your party are going to believe it as well. And so that means they won't prepare. You won't prepare because all your numbers on the inside will be saying paid remigration will work. And finally, you risk creating a central, secret, unaccountable cabal of powerful people, a powerful elite who control policy in secret. And I don't think that's workable. I think it's much better to be open about it. It's much better to be honest about ugly reality first. Get people to hate you. Get people to despise you or just ignore you the way a lot of people do towards me. That's okay by me. I'd rather tell the truth and be ignored than tell fibs and get a bit of attention for it. And the powerful elites are a bad idea. Biker gangs, hooligan or gang bosses or renegade colonels, they do not... things do not go well under such criminals. And they also have the incentive to prolong the problem that they say that they want to solve. So they probably won't put remigration into effect. What they'll want is to say, we can't get rid of these people, but we will protect you from them. Okay, so there could be another line that people who mean it about paid remigration, they assume that foreigners will, when it comes to it, foreigners will then, say in a decade's time, they will realise how unwelcome they are, and then their tail will go between their legs and they'll change their mind, and a bit of money will be nice and they will take it. There is no evidence whatever for that. I think all the evidence is the other way. The way they form communities amongst themselves, they won't care what we think of them. What they will care about is what they think of each other. And incidentally, 31,000 euros to leave, that is a big you are not welcome sign. If you offered me 31,000 euros to leave your home, I'd snatch your hand off. But I wouldn't. I'd conclude that I was unwelcome there. I wouldn't come knocking on your door. Well, I wouldn't assume you're going to invite me in again. So I think from the evidence we have, what is certain is that the message in big red letters is that paid repatriation is going to fail. Now, just to show that I'm not trying to trash all solutions to say nothing is going to work, give up, that's not what I want to do. I'll outline what I think is likely to happen, or what I think should happen. I think we are best off letting the enemy do the work for us, that we should let them impose these unlivable conditions upon themselves, separate themselves out, and then put themselves into squalor and degradation such that it becomes attractive to leave again. And the way I think this is likely to play out, without a lot of help from me, I think it'll play out this way of its own accord, is, first of all, I think the economy will collapse. If you look at what Labour are doing with the economy, this economy is starting to just come apart at the seams. Some of the stitching at the seams is starting to pop, and that's going to continue. It's going to get worse. And if the economy breaks down, we will get welfare collapse, and then welfare collapse, I think, will lead us into going nuts and rejecting the authority of the state, because the authority has not kept its welfare promises. And if we reject the authority of the state authority then collapses. Simply, it's got no money, it can't impose its will, and people reject its authority anyway. The state authority, I think, will go down. And to that extent, I think we are living, and this might seem strange, but I think we are living at the beginning of the end of the age of the state. I keep saying that. That, I think, is the kind of era that we're living in. And then if the state goes down, I think you will see people, for safety and for self-protection, self-preservation, will separate out along hard ethnic and racial lines, so that you can be amongst people you trust and know and understand, and people you can rely on to cooperate with you so that you can protect each other. I think that's the way things will go, and I think you'll see foreigners voluntarily, willingly separating themselves out because they'll find they really don't like us. They want to protect their turf, protect themselves by living in their own enclaves. And now that is the point where I think people like me can do something. That's where I intend to do something, because I think at that point the overriding essential thing is for us, the English, to adopt law, to adopt legal systems of our own, legal codes. Now, I've written one, it's on my website, it's very rough and ready, but it's enough to use as long as you rent a judge and kick him out the backside to make sure he applies it properly. If the state is not there to impose law, an overarching legal system upon everyone, as it won't be, then we will have to join legal codes voluntarily, which we will do in order to continue to be safe and to be able to continue to trade and to work, to get employed and to have things like a bank account. And so I think we will voluntarily join legal systems to do that. And that is the important thing, to get up systems of law, DIY, voluntary, vote with your feet systems of law, like joining a club. And in those systems, in that situation, no one will join a legal system, a legal club that allows foreigners in it, because they're expensive, they're parasitic, they're violent, they're crime-ridden, and they're hostile to us. So there's no point, there's no gain in having them within your system. And then if that happens, then foreign populations live outside of our law, physically separated out, but also legally and socially separated out. And that makes them unable to deal with us, unable to trade with us, because there's no court where you can enforce deals with them. They're not legally governed. They can do anything to you. They can break their word. They can commit crimes and cheat you. And there's no comeback, because they're not subject to law. And if they can't deal with us and they can't trade with us, and obviously they're getting their welfare because the welfare state's broken down, they will have no way to live. There might be an important point about then enforcing a prohibition on aid to those, humanitarian aid to those foreign enclaves, but in general, as long as we can do that, it'll simply, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're not entitled to give aid to people. They are not being forced to stay there. They can leave at any time. That is not the Warsaw Ghetto. They can get on an aeroplane and get out of the country, go back to their ancestral homelands. And so that is not ethnic cleansing, that is not genocide. It is simply allowing them, standing back and letting them stew in their own juice. And I think if you do that, and if they have no way to live, no way to make a living, which they won't, then their congested and poverty-stricken ghettos will plummet fast. And I think after a few months, probably maybe a few weeks of self-inflicted hunger and squalor, those people will be willing to leave, perhaps just for a free airplane ticket and a little bit of cash to bribe the airport officials in their bent homelands. So that's the solution that I offer. That's what I mean when I say we're going to collapse our way out of this situation. We're not going to vote our way out of it. But what I want to warn you is, be wary of people peddling fantasies about paid remigration. And I'd like any organisations that are trying to gain members with the promise of remigration to think hard and to think carefully. You'll be respected in the long term if you do. You will be disrespected if you try to sweet talk people with nonsense about paid remigration. And because at the moment, all the evidence says that without some unforeseeable change, it is simply fantasy to talk about paid remigration. So what I would like to say is, in the meantime, put on your Iceman head and think through negative remigration clearly, Mr. Nasty remigration, how that can work without dirtying our hands, and try to think that through clearly and calculatedly. Thank you.